I think there's one thing here we can all agree on. The internet has certainly changed our lives. So much so that according to statistics, 3 out of every 4 Americans can't imagine life without it. Music, news, shopping, and especially video services such as this platform, YouTube, have huge amounts of data flowing through them every day, and it just keeps growing.
You got mail.
Apple is the appliance of the 80s.
Amazon is giving the delivery guy a spare key to your house.
All the apps, GPS, video.
One classroom.
Nombre es María Jesús.
Connecting with another, one continent and 4 time zones away.
Officials at the U.S. State Department were so concerned about the anti-Muslim videos that President Trump retweeted yesterday.
And surprisingly, according to Cisco's estimates, just in the next 5 years alone, the United States will multiply its internet traffic by 3. In fact, in 2015, the United States matched and surpassed South Korea, becoming the world's leader per capita in data consumption. And of course, the internet, this great virtual world, is becoming more integrated with our lives and making up an increasingly larger share of our economic activity. So, based on all of this, you can probably imagine 2 things. First, the massive amount of infrastructure required by all of this consumption, and second, how important internet regulation is. Well, on the 14th of December 2017, the Federal Communications Commission of the United States made a decision that could well be described as historic, due to its transcendence and, above all, its controversy. Dear viewer, as you may know, the Federal Communications Commission decided by 3 votes against 2 to end so-called net neutrality.
No one really is sure what will happen now that the government has changed the rules governing the World Wide Web.
This regulation was approved in 2015 at the request of President Obama himself. Yup, you heard that right. The regulation known as net neutrality was born in 2015. Within a short time, Twitter, the media, and practically every debate space was covered with this message. We're facing the end of the internet as we know it. By the way, this man is Ajit Pai, chairman of the United States' Federal Communications Commission, and this story's main protagonist, or we could say antagonist.
What we've decided is that we need to restore the light touch, market-based framework that started in the 1990s.
He is also probably one of the most hated people on the internet. Well, there may be a couple of questions that we need to answer here. First, what was this regulation fundamentally about? And second, what does this change really mean?
Hey, it's Barack.
What am I going to do in D.C. for 2 years?
See, in 2015, it was decided that the internet would pass from being regulated by the first title of the Communications Law to the second title. Well, that doesn't really help us, so what does that mean? Well, to understand this better, we could say that with this change, the internet, that is, the service provision, started to be considered a public service and to be strongly regulated by the government, in this case by the Federal Communications Commission.
Ever since the internet was created, it's been organized around basic principles of openness, fairness, and freedom. This set of principles, the idea of net neutrality, has unleashed the power of the internet and given innovators the chance to thrive. Abandoning these principles would threaten to end the internet as we know it.
This is a regulation that, among other things, prevented American operators such as Comcast, Verizon, or AT&T from being able to, on the one hand, block or slow down certain web spaces or applications' traffic, and on the other, prevent other content providers from being preferred.
They should make it clear that whether you use a computer, phone, or tablet, internet providers have a legal obligation not to block or limit your access to a website.
Imagine if a company decided to give priority to Netflix over HBO, or a company that told Spotify they needed to pay if they wanted their customers to be able to use their music services at high speed. With this regulation, companies weren't able to charge fees that didn't include access to a certain service. Imagine, for example, if a business wanted a high-speed connection but didn't consume Netflix, Prime Video, or HBO videos. It wouldn't matter, because with this previous regulation, they'd have to pay for the entire service. The operators wouldn't be able to offer a rate without Netflix. However, dear viewer, this has all changed. In the United States, companies can now freely determine their rates, for example by offering an internet that doesn't include being able to watch 4K videos. Now, this doesn't mean that they will, but we will probably see different rates emerge. And it is basically this which caused such controversy on the internet.
We are here, we won't forget. We want open internet.
It was so controversial that only 107 out of the 239 Republican congressmen in the House of Representatives have made their support for this decision public. But do you think this is really that bad? Do you think that the internet will no longer be the same? Well, in this video, we want to show you the various arguments for and against net neutrality.
An internet threat?
First, let's have a look at the dark side, the reasons why net neutrality defenders consider this change to be so negative. These points are by far better known, so it won't take very long. Those who detract from the change that the Republican Party promoted base their position on two key arguments. First, that given that operators can now charge extra to both companies and customers, the cost of the internet will go up and many small businesses and startups won't be able to compete with larger ones because they won't be able to pay for preferential access. Second, because it involves the end of the freedom on which the internet was built. Imagine if an operator decided to slow down or even block access to a means of communication. Theoretically, this could now happen.
Our internet economy is the envy of the world because it is open to all. This proposal tears at the foundation of that openness. It hands broadband providers the power to decide what voices to amplify, which sites we can visit, what connections we can make, and what communities we create. It throttles access, stalls opportunity, and censors content. Jessica Rosenworcel, member of the Federal Communications Commission.
But you're probably well versed on these arguments already, considering how often they've been used in the media. However, dear viewer, you probably know that here at VisualPolitik we like to dig a little deeper, so this time we also wanted to take a look at the net neutrality's detractors side, so, well, let's go for it.
Lights also count.
Those who support ending so-called net neutrality have a clear perspective. A very competitive market is the best driver for innovation and ensuring good customer service. And one thing is certainly true. The internet, it emerged, it grew, and it developed fundamentally as a free space without the regulation known as net neutrality. This is what Marc Andreessen, Netscape's co-founder and a key figure in Facebook's birth, said on the subject.
A pure net neutrality view is difficult to sustain if you also want to have continued investment in broadband networks. If you have these pure net neutrality rules where you can never charge a company like Netflix anything, you're not ever going to get a return on continued network investment, which means you'll stop investing in the network. And I would not want to be sitting here 10 or 20 years from now with the same broadband speeds we're getting today. Marc Andreessen, Netscape's co-founder.
Yes, this is one of the main criticisms they have used to support this change. Regulation discourages companies from investing. As we've seen before, internet traffic in the US has grown tremendously in recent years. However, surprisingly, investment in broadband infrastructure has stagnated and even decreased in the same span of time. This obviously isn't normal, and it fuels one of the sector's main problems in the United States, and that's a lack of competition in many parts of the country. But of course, if regulation hinders and reduces the business's potential profitability, investment incentives are also substantially reduced. It's pretty logical, right? Another point claimed by those supporting the end to Obama's regulation is that this regulation could not only hurt investment, but it was also completely unnecessary.
For almost 20 years, the internet has thrived under the light-touch regulatory approach established by President Clinton and a Republican Congress. This bipartisan framework led the private sector to invest $1.5 trillion building communications networks throughout the United States. And it gave us an internet economy that became the envy of the world. Ajit Pai.
According to these supporters, in the 20 years before net neutrality, that is, between 1995 and 2015, internet access only expanded and improved in speed and quality. Throughout this time, the big digital companies we know today, Google, Facebook, Netflix, Uber, they emerged. In fact, it's funny, but operators haven't really been the big winners of the internet's birth. example, Alphabet Inc., Google's parent company, has a stock market value that's quite a bit bigger than the combined value of the 3 largest telecommunications operators in the United States. Therefore, net neutrality defectors wonder why change something that has worked so well since its inception. When has an operator restricted access to a means of communication, for example, Gmail? In fact, and this is what they use as an example, the only time something similar happened was when Comcast tried to block peer-to-peer connections to stop illegal downloads. In the end, they had to back down because of bad publicity and pressure from authorities. But, and this is the third point here, less regulation does not mean anarchy. In fact, from now on in the United States, the internet will be regulated by the powerful Federal Trade Commission, which is in charge of the antitrust policy. And operators will also have to comply with a strict transparency policy. They will have to clearly communicate any policy that restricts or favors access speed to any digital service.
The truth is, the sky is not going to fall down. The FTC is going to be a vigorous cop on the beat, as it has been, with respect to the internet providers. John Leibowitz, a former Obama-era FTC chairman.
Well, reform advocates proposed 2 examples of how the market can evolve without net neutrality. One is the mobile phone market, which is much more competitive and has always been at the limits of legality. The advocates say that in this sector, users have seen reductions in their rates while their services have improved. Nowadays, there are promotions that include unlimited access to services such as Netflix without data consumption, which clearly violates the spirit of net neutrality. The second example they usually give is curiously found in airlines, particularly the company JetBlue. See, these companies weren't subjected to net neutrality, and in spite of that, and having an agreement with Amazon to prioritize Prime Video consumption on board, they freely decided not to punish other services such as HBO.
Our strategy for in-flight Wi-Fi is to offer the best service at the lowest cost to as many passengers as possible, so we're motivated to support all content in a fair and neutral way. Mark Dankberg, Chief Executive of Viasat Incorporated, the satellite company that provides JetBlue's internet.
Now, we are, without a doubt, facing a very complex question. But whether or not you agree with net neutrality, both detractors and opponents may have exaggerated its consequence just a bit. I don't think we're facing the end of the internet, and we must not forget that consumption tends to protect freedom. Yes, now it is true that large parts of the United States do have a serious competition problem. Networks are only available from 1 or 2 companies, and there isn't a market for choosing an operator. But fortunately, new technologies such as 5G, which will make more competition possible, they seem to be just around the corner. Personally, I'm left with one wish, and that's that the internet remains as free as possible. But now, well, it's your turn. What do you think of the end of net neutrality? Well, leave your answer in the comments below, as well as in this survey. And I really hope you enjoyed this video. Please hit like if you did. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for brand new videos every Monday and Thursday. Also, don't forget to check out our friends at the Reconsider Media podcast. They provided the vocals in this episode that were not mine. And as always, thank you for watching.
Connecting with another, 1 continent and 4 time zones away.
Officials at the U.S. State Department were so concerned about the